Hey there, Internet! Now, a while ago, I heard about a new game coming out for the Super Nintendo, and immediately I got excited because Super Nintendo always kind of been my favorite console. And unlike the stuff over at Time Walk Games, which, don't get me wrong, love the site, well, they're dead now, but when they were around they were great, but that was mostly translated games from other countries and a lot of ROM hacks. This game is brand new, just developed, just coming out. I was excited as crap. However, I went, ordered the game. I learned a couple things about it. Unfortunately, I didn't learn until afterward. The first thing being, not really a new game. Second thing being, I wasn't going to get it anytime soon, and also, it's really not much of a game at all. But I'll get to all that later. First, my shiny new intro. Okay, so let me start by saying a few nice things about the game, because people like it when you say nice things. First off, the music in this game is pretty good, and I'm a bit of a music snob when it comes to old games. Anything with a good soundtrack, I love it. Simon's Quest, Zelda 2, Dragon Warrior, all of them fucking great. Most people would disagree, but that's beside the point. So I do have to give this game props for getting at least that right. Also, I have to say that the controls are actually pretty tight and responsive, and the graphics are actually really good. So it does look like it should be a great game, but it isn't. But I'll get back to that. First, the claim that this is the first new game to come out on the Super Nintendo for a while, not true at all. There's been a major homebrew community out there for most old consoles that's been going strong pretty much since the conception. The NES, for example, has had a game released every single year since it came out in 1985. Even the SNES had another game released last year for it called 16-Bit Christmas. So this wasn't even the newest game that year, let alone the newest one in 10 plus years. I actually picked up 3 new games for consoles that are well over 10 years old last year. But not only is this not the only new game for the Super Nintendo, it's actually not even a new game. The game itself was partially created by a company called Nichibutsu, way back in the 90s, back when the SNES was still alive. They never finished the project, but it was released as a prototype later on and has actually been playable online as a ROM for at least the last 5 years. So they may have finished the game up, but it's not really theirs. Also, I have to say, I was doing some interweb research, and I found forum posts way back in March of 2012 stating that the pre-orders had just filled up. And I know I was among the first wave of pre-orders. They did do a second one later on, but I was way before those folk. I was on top of shit. Well, I didn't actually get the game until a little bit earlier this month, January of 2014. For those of you playing the home game, that's a little over a year and a half. It really makes it hard to keep the faith when a company makes you wait a year and a half for their game. Picture of Duke Nukem Forever here. Alright, one more complaint, then I promise gameplay footage, all that. But the reason I said earlier that this is barely a game is because it's incredibly broken. The very first time I put it in, the Super Fighter team, which by the way I forgot to mention earlier, people that made this thing, their logo popped up, it's got some music, that went for about 10 seconds, great. And then you know what? I'll show you. So my assumption is the logo and the game itself are actually on different parts of the physical memory, and that's why one loaded and just sat there, reminding me how much of a waste this really is. However, I took it out, blew in it, and much to my disappointment, it loaded fine. Alright, but enough of the crap, now I'll show you the game.
Alright, so this is the game Nightmare Busters. Like I said, I guess it looks pretty, and when you first start out, it is kind of fun. But you'll learn very quickly that the fun goes away because of the difficulty. This game is insane, and I don't just mean Nintendo hard, because I know games back then were way harder than they are now. I mean, this shit is ridiculous. Like this point right here. You shoot at this total pole for an hour and a half, make the thing start to fall, and then you have to stand here and wait for 5 minutes while this thing's falling. Enemies coming in 5 different directions. You can hit them in maybe 2 of them, and there's shit you can do to avoid getting killed. The other issue you run into here is that this game, it's really just unreasonably hard. Like, there's a difference between being challenging and then being a brutal asshat. Like, when you're playing this game, you spend most of your time, honestly, just frustrated. Like, as pretty as it looks, and as much as I want to enjoy it, half the time, I can't even genuinely say I'm having fun. And speaking of looking pretty, it does, but they spent so much time, I think, on stuff like the graphics and the effects that everything kind of blends together, and it's really hard to actually separate what's part of the game and what's just pretty looking. Like that floor right there that killed me for the umpteenth time. How the hell would you know you can't stand there? There is almost nothing to really differentiate that between anything you'd seen prior. You had no warning that it was coming up, no indication that it would kill you in any way. It's just kind of a surprise for you to find all on your own. So this is the kind of game you'd probably compare to something like Goldeneye or one of those other classic, side-scrolling beat-em-up games. But unlike that, it's just too glitchy. There's too many issues. Aside from the difficulty and the graphics, which honestly is kind of a positive in their part that they did make the game so pretty, there's just a lot of glitches. Like you've probably noticed by now, every time you get hit, you turn invisible. And for a decent amount of time, when you get into a sequence with a lot of enemies or a lot going on, it's hard to tell where on the screen you actually are. So, like in a boss fight like this, for example, if I spend half my time invisible, I can't really tell if I'm winning or losing or what the hell I'm doing. Luckily, with this game, you always know you're losing, but I can't really tell why.
Alright, so there you go. I waited a year and a half for a new indie game, which I usually love, for the Super Nintendo. Instead, I get a retarded leprechaun being continually slaughtered by gremlins. Fuck this game. Why is there no text here? What the hell is he pointing at?